Good morning, New Life. It's a beautiful day today. Hope you're comfortable and ready just to let Papa speak into your heart today. So let's pray for the word. Papa, we just want to thank you for your goodness. We thank you for this season again that we are in. It's a season like none other. And Papa, we thank you that you are in it. And that because you're in it, our perspective can be different. And we can see your hand at work. We can see your goodness. Papa, I also just pray that we would be able to just yield in a sense to what you're doing in our life right now and allow your Spirit to take us to the places that we need to be in this time during this season. In the name of Jesus, amen. So I just want to start with just reading from John 2. The man who enters by the gate is the shepherd of his sheep. The watchman, and that's interesting. I think, you can kind of like just meditate on this passage of scripture for ages. But even just that word, the watchman, I feel like the watchman is a man of discernment. The man of discernment opens the gate when he knows the Lord is coming, that Jesus is coming. So the watchman opens the gate for him, and the sheep listen to his voice. He calls his own sheep by name and leads them out. When he has brought out all his own, he goes on ahead of them, and his sheep follow him because they know his voice. But they will never follow a stranger. In fact, they will run away from him because they do not recognize a stranger's voice. Now, it's all very good because, when we do hear a stranger's voice, we don't recognize the voice. Obviously, we're dubious of that voice. We sort of like, we're going to question that voice because we've not heard it before. A stranger's voice we won't recognize. But what happens to the voice that is not the Lord, and it is not the stranger, but we have become so accustomed to it, we've become used to that voice. It's a voice that maybe is so familiar with us, and it could be, just the lies and things like that we've believed in the past. The same tormenting voice that we even speak to ourselves with, the voice of accusation, the voice of ridicule, the voice that keeps breaking us down. That voice has been a voice that's been with us for a very long time, and we've become accustomed to that voice. So it's not a stranger's voice, it's not the Lord's voice, but it's a voice that we're familiar with, and so we don't run away from it. And so, it could be the voice that we're hearing from the media constantly over and over because maybe that's what we're feeding on. Or even our religious background, the religious boxes that we've put ourselves in, the religious rules that we've put over our lives, that almost becomes a torment to us. It becomes a heavy yoke, almost like the law was to the Israelites in the past, and that's why Papa had a better covenant for them, because they could not live under the weight of that law. But slowly, we bring in voices that become a weight over our life, like law, and it slowly just starts to sap away at our freedom, sap away at the life and the joy of living. And eventually we're under this yoke, and we think it is a good voice. We think it is a right voice. And so that is a voice that we don't run away from. But we're familiar with that voice. I even thought of, a lot of times when, in many cases, when there's abductions, when children are being abducted, it's not by a stranger, it's by somebody that has been used that is familiar to that child, maybe even a family member. So on Wednesday night, when we were doing strategy table, if we can just draw a conclusion to the whole Wednesday evening strategy table, we felt like Papa was saying the strategy for this season, particularly now during this counting of the Omar, it's such a anointed time to enter in to the invitations of Papa and to know the timing of Papa, and that in this time of the counting of the Omer up to Shavuot, which is Pentecost, there is a season that we need to take hold of. And Papa's saying that this season is a season just to wait on Papa. And I know, for many the wait is difficult, and we do it for a little while, and then we go back into our old habits and stuff like that. But really the wait is something that we need to practice. It's something that I need to get myself accustomed to, because what I'm doing in the wait is I'm not listening to my voice, or all the stuff that I need to get out to Papa, or the things I need to say, because it's just a one-way conversation. But the wait is actually just saying, well, I'm not going to say anything. I'm just going to wait here until I begin to discern Papa's voice, the right voice, the good voice, the voice that I can start to recognize at the drop of a hat, a voice that I can recognize when I'm surrounded by calamity, when I'm surrounded by a lot of noise. It's a voice that I need to, that's a voice I can discern. I can get hold of that voice. And so this is really a time to recognize that voice, but more than just discerning that voice, it's that I can become present with him. In the same way as he says, I am the great I am, ever present in your moment of trouble. In that moment, he's present in that moment. And so that's something I've got to practice, is in this moment, I'm present, completely present with Papa. And you can try it out. You can sort of like say, well, I'm going to maybe do 15 minutes, but don't let the time be the thing that you are gauging your wait by. Slowly let it just become, I'm just waiting. However long I need to just wait, I'll know in my spirit that this has been a good time. This has been a good wait. I can now get, do whatever I need to do next. But it's just been totally still. And you know what? In that time of totally still, when Papa starts to speak, and I'm speaking from my own experience, is that when Papa starts to speak, I'm thinking, oh my gosh, that's amazing. Let me write it down. And what happens is I'm being distracted from just that moment of being present. I don't need to write it down. I can write it down afterwards. Whatever the Spirit wants to bring back to remembrance, let me write down that. But let me not break this moment of just being so focused with Papa. I don't need to worry about, I need to remember that. I need to remember what he's just told me right now so that I can write it down, so that I can communicate it. Who am I communicating it to? Who's this all for? This is for me. This is a time with me and Papa, the most important time. And so don't worry about what comes next, or where the day is going to go, or whatever. It's just being present in that moment. And it's kind of like, who am I living for? I'm living for him. I'm living for him to fill me with his life, so that I can function in the way that he wants me to function. I'm not living before man. It's not about what I can after this present to man, what I can communicate after this. No, I'm not living before man. At this very present moment, he is everything. And that's all that matters. Not about remembering what he's saying, not about writing it down, not about how I'm going to communicate this. It's got nothing. Just be present with him, and don't be distracted. Don't even look at the watch. And you know what? It's kind of been helping me with my painting, because I can almost relate with this. What happens is I build up this massive scenario before I start painting, and it becomes a huge task that I have to try and break through before I get to the place when I actually start painting. And then while I'm painting or drawing or whatever it is, I'm thinking about what this end product needs to look like. it's something that needs to be presented again. It's something that needs to be approved. It's something that I need to be happy with. It's something that needs to look like what I'm trying to portray. And so I create all these rules and these regulations about this painting and where it needs to be going and just getting the approval of it and so on. And what is man going to say? What's the next person going to say about this that I'm producing? And Papa's saying it's not about that. It's being present in the moment. So if I'm there drawing just this last project, the lion's hair, I'm drawing the lion's hair, just be present in that moment. Don't worry about, I need to get this finished. That's not what it's about. I'm present in this moment, and that's what I'm working on. That's what I'm busy with. That's what I'll focus on. Okay, and it's not about trying to rush ahead. It's kind of, when I was thinking about it, it's kind of like golf. Now, golf is one of those sports that most guys just absolutely love and stuff like that. But with me, I'd go to play golf, but before I get there, I'm in a nervous wreck because I'm going with a bunch of professionals. I'm going to hash it up. I'm going to mess it up. And so it's this whole scenario, this anticipation of it's all going to go pear-shaped. And even one of the golf courses that we would tee off from, you would tee off over a car park. I mean, for goodness sake, you're teeing off over a car park, and I'm sitting there and I'm a nervous wreck. Am I gonna hit somebody's car with the ball? But just using the golf analogy is that one of the things you have to learn is be completely present at that moment and follow through the presence. So, for instance, when you're doing a swing and you want to hit that ball, what happens is as you're swinging, in most cases, you're lifting your head because you want to see where that ball's going to go. I want to see the outcome before I've actually connected the ball. So what happens is in that moment, just before the connecting of the ball, I'm lifting my head to see, I want to see where that ball's going to go. But what happens is everything lifts, everything becomes premature, and what happens is I hit the ball on the head instead of the belly, and the ball doesn't go, it's a mess up. And so there's a thing in golf what's called follow through. So I'm completely focused, and even the person who was teaching me would grab my hair, hold my head down and say, you're not going to lift your head until you have completely followed through. And so I'd pull my head down and he'd hold my head there. I'd follow completely through. And then once the connections happen, I can look up. My caddy is the one who's looking where my ball's gone, if it's lost or if it's not lost. That's not my concern. My concern is to be completely focused until this thing is done. And so the same thing, the follow through, the same principle, you can, in other sports as well. I know when I was doing sprinting at school, when you would sprint, you don't sprint to the finish line. The finish line doesn't become the place I sprint to, because if the finish line is the place I'm looking at and I need to sprint to that place, what happens is subconsciously I start to slow down at the finish line. No, I am completely focused in this moment, and I sprint through the finish line. And so you can use the same analogy is being focused in that moment, not worrying about what lies ahead, not worrying about the finish, not worrying about anything else, but that moment, and everything I'm doing is I'm focused right there. And it's the same when I'm in the weight, I'm just focused right there. And so what happens is you enter into the zone. So I was completely zoned in. I'm going to use that word zone. So I completely focus in an inner zone right now with Papa, and I zone out of everything else. I zone in, and I'm just in this moment where it's just like everything is still. My body is completely relaxed. I don't know if you've ever, at some stage they're quite popular, a thing called the stereogram. The stereogram is sort of like it looks like chaos of just color and shapes and forms and stuff like that, just on a page. But as you're looking at that page, what happens is you stare through it, not at the point, you stare through it, and as you're staring through it, what happens is this 3D image starts to form. The moment you sort of like, you blink or you move your head, it goes back into the two-dimensional form. But there's a point where you completely zone in. This 3D image comes it pops out, and everything around it just is in this three-dimensional zone, and you're there. You focused on it. You're right there in that place, and you're holding it. You're beholding it. And you can actually start to move your eyes around and look around the 3D object, but you're in the zone. And I almost liken the weight like that. I get to this point where I'm in the zone. It's like everything is zoned out. And it all becomes still. As I said, my body is completely relaxed. Everything around me. And it's just his voice. And it's him. I recognize him. I recognize his voice. He's there. I'm present with him right now. It's like when I got saved, the meeting that I went to, and I'm standing against the wall, and I go to this little home group, and I'm standing against the wall, and everybody's worshiping, and I know Papa's calling me. I know he's doing something in my life, but I don't know what it is. I don't know what it looks like. I'm just standing there. So, okay, I don't know these worship songs, and I'm just going to let them go through me, and I'm just going to let them become my focus to Papa. I didn't know what I was doing right then, but it was the Spirit of God doing something. And I let that music just go through me. I wasn't singing it out audibly. I just let it go through me, and I let it become my worship to Papa. And at that moment, it was as though everything else just became dim, completely dim. It was like it zoned completely out. And it felt like all that existed was just my spirit, my soul, and him. It was like we were in this space together, and it was like I knew he was real. At that very moment, in this just incredible supernatural place of his presence and me completely present with him, I said, I'm yours. And my life changed completely in that place. And I think we've got to practice getting back to that place where everything else is zoned out and I'm zoned in to him and his voice. Recognize it's just me and you right now. And if I'm drifting away at any moment and I start to think about something, I just pull myself back. It's like, in 2 Corinthians 10, so from verse 4 and 5, is we have these weapons that we fight with that are divine. They have divine power for the pulling down of strongholds. We demolish strongholds. We demolish arguments and every pretension. And I want to say, this is not just things around us, they're things within us. Okay, so what happens is we demolish arguments and every pretension that sets itself up against the knowledge of God. And I take captive of every thought and I make it obedient to Christ. It's like I've got to capture something that's running away. And so when I'm sitting in that moment and I'm with Papa and my thoughts begin to run away, some people say, oh, it's okay if your thoughts run away. But what I'm wanting to do here is I'm wanting to learn to be present. And so when my thoughts start to run away, I take them captive and I bring myself back. Bring myself back. Let's be present. Let's be present until I'm in that place again where it's just his voice and I can hear him and it's clear. I think of Mary and Martha as well. You've got Mary and Martha, but it's almost as though Mary and Martha represent one person. They represent you and I. Mary chooses that one thing, and so it's like you choose this one thing. I want to go and sit at the feet of Jesus, and I just want to soak in his presence. I want to hear his voice, soak it all in. But in the meantime, the Martha part of me is thinking about all the things that need to be done. The things of the day. I've only got a certain a moment of time here, and there's a rest of the day that needs to be accomplished. And so the Martha part of me is running ahead, and it's like thinking of all the stuff that needs to be done. And so I have this almost split personality going on the inside of me. And Martha says to Jesus, she says to Jesus, hey, tell Mary that she needs to help me. Things need to be done. And you know, the moment anything takes priority, it's an idol. When something else becomes bigger or greater than my moment with Jesus, then it's most probably an idol in my life, and I need to let it go. It's not that important. So Martha, as I said, tells Jesus, hey, tell Mary she needs to be helping me with this stuff. And so the accuser comes in. The accuser comes in and he starts to set guilt in place. So now here I am sitting, choosing the one thing, and guilt starts to set in place. And what the enemy does is the enemy tries to disguise that voice to be the voice of the Lord. He says, hey, tell Greg. And so it almost, what the enemy is intending to do is to disguise it so it almost seems as though it's coming from Jesus himself. And he says, there's things that you need to be doing. There's stuff that you need to be doing. This is in excess. You're not being productive right now. This is a waste of time. You need to be doing something. But what I want to say is that this is worth more weight in gold. The weight is worth more in weight of gold. Is that what I wanted to say? More than all the productivity that you can be doing. This is worth more weight in gold than any of that stuff. Amen. And so the weight is powerful. It's powerful. What it does is my whole life becomes in focus. My whole life becomes still, quiet, uninterrupted, and it's in focus. I'm present in this very given moment. And it doesn't always have to be something that is spiritual, but I can just be present in the moment. I don't have to be rushing away. My whole life comes to a place of shalom. It's in a place of rest right now. And I'm in that zone. I want to kind of like give you an example. Like, you know, when I was growing up, one of the things I feared a lot was objects underwater. And so if I was swimming and I knew that there was an object under the water, I would become fearful. Now that object is lying dormant. If there's a pipe or something like that, I just get fearful. And so fear sets in when I'm swimming. Because when I grew up, we grew up on a farm, so we swam in lakes and stuff like that. And we'd climb these towers and pin drop down into, you know, water that just got darker and darker. And then, you know, this fear would set in. So I would always be afraid of objects under the water. And so when I was going to start scuba diving, one of the places we were going to scuba dive was the Zenobia Wreck, which is off the Larnaca coast. And so the first time I went out, I thought, let me just snorkel over this area. And I was snorkeling over where I knew the Zenobia was, the Zenobia Wreck, which is 165 meters long. It's a massive ship. And it's only 16 meters. It tops only 16 meters below me right now. And so I think, well, okay, I'm going to just put my goggles on and I'm going to just look down. And as I look down, I see this monstrosity beneath me, and my heart is pumping, and it's like this fear has set in as I see this thing below me. And so, eventually I started scuba diving the Zenobia Wreck, and it became just a beautiful place to be, penetrating inside the wreck, seeing inside and doing swim throughs and stuff like that. But when I first started scuba diving, one of the places the instructor was a friend of mine took me to was caves from outside Cape Greco. And so you would go into the water and then you would go down the side of these rocks, which were all underwater, and then you would enter into this cave from underneath the water, and then you'd come through the cave and then you'd swim through these little narrow channels, and then come out of a blowhole on the surface, and the surface would be on the ground. And so anyway, this was one of the first places I was going to go and scuba dive. So my fear and my heart is racing. And so I'm under there, I'm going through that, I'm looking at, these this place that is busy narrowing, and my heart is racing. But what happens is somehow, I don't know if the instructor, which is a friend of mine, realized that I must have been in fear or something, but he reached out and he took my hand, and as he took my hand, it was as though the fear of everything around changed. I was still in the same environment, but I suddenly felt safe. The environment didn't change, but it changed from a place of the anticipation of something bad happening, the anticipation of harm, or something hurting me in some way, changed to the anticipation of exhilaration. It felt exhilarating. I was in this place, this place that normally I'd be fearful, but now I'm safe. And I was able to go through the blowhole, and so on. So let me just see where I am. So yeah, that fear actually, it cripples you, it retards you. And so, when you wake up in the morning and you sort of like, you think of your day as you wake up, and you think, oh my gosh, what's going to happen in this day? It kind of like, it cripples you. Your whole day starts off being retarded because of this anticipation that something is going to go wrong. And it's these voices that we have become accustomed to, these voices that have led us, these voices that have guarded our day and our life, and has robbed us of life. And that's what the accuser does. He comes to steal, kill, and destroy. He comes to rob you of just living fully. And so I need to practice this weight. And while practicing this weight, it's as though a hand comes out, and this hand takes hold of me at the very start of my day. And I know, okay, my day is still going to be my day, but I'm safe. I can be at complete rest. I'm present, and I'm present with him, and he's got my hand, and he can now just take me through this day. I don't need to be in this place of anticipating fear or anticipating something's going to go wrong in some way, because he's got my hand. And I started that day like that. And so, yeah, that fear turns to exhilaration. Oh, this day is going to be great because he's got my hand. And so I don't need to be in this place of worrying about harm or pain, but an anticipation of the goodness of God. Anticipating that this day is going to be good, and it's going to be full of the goodness of Papa. And I hear his voice saying, Greg, for I know the plans that I have for you. Plans not to harm you, but plans to give you a hope and a future. To prosper you and to give you a hope and a future. And those are plans to give me a hope, a joyful anticipation of what lies ahead. Because Papa's in it and he has my hand. Amen. Let's pray. Papa, we just thank you that you are ever present, and that we too can be ever present with you in a place of complete quiet and still, and know that you are there in this place of stillness. Be still and know that I am God, and I have your hand, I have your back. I've gone ahead, I've prepared the place for you. I will not leave you, I will not forsake you. Papa, thank you for those plans that you have for us. Plans to prosper us and not to harm us. Plans to give us a hope and a future. Papa, thank you that I can rest in this place Even though my day might be still filled with the same environment, I have a different anticipation, and it's the goodness of your heart towards me, towards us. In Jesus' name, amen.